The Utah Story Show is brought to you in part by Utah State, home of the Aggies. So living on campus means more sleep, more friends, and better grades because you are not commuting. While others are driving or walking on campus, you're getting those precious extra minutes of sleep. Instead of going home to your mom or your cat, you're hanging out with roommates, neighbors, and friends. So 84% of USU students live away from home, making on-campus housing a community of academic support, peer mentors, friends, and constant activities. For a virtual tour, room details, theme options, and to apply, visit usu.edu/housing. The show is also brought to you by Paisley's Grass-Fed Beef. Premium all-natural grass-fed beef delivered right to your door, free anywhere in the state of Utah. It's an awesome new company, and we love their jerky and their steaks, and everything they do is awesome. Visit paisleys.com. That is PAIZLEES.com. Paisley's Grass-Fed Beef, always the right choice. Fear is the most primal emotion we have in our brains. There's no question that we as human beings have survived and flourished on this planet due to our amygdala. It's a part of our brain that's attached to our cerebral cortex that triggers all sorts of floods of neurochemistry to enter into our brain. On the program today, I had a very exciting guest, a guy who started a business called Fear Factory. Now in Utah, we have one of the highest per capita rates for haunted houses. We have some of the best and biggest haunted houses in the entire country here. On the program, without further ado, Rob Dunfield. So you converted a concrete factory into a fear factory.
That's
so
correct.
How and when did you do that?
Wow. 2011 was our first year. So 2010 was when we stumbled across the Portland cement factory, which had been abandoned and kind of left for many years, just kind of vacant, and when we got there anyway, there was a lot of homeless people living on the property and some other interesting things going on. So it had been abandoned for a while.
Wow. And so you were only using the giant facility to produce fear. No longer any product that you could touch or feel.
That is correct. Yeah. Most people, I think, that were looking at the property, because it was an old cement factory, it has some huge buildings with huge amounts of cement foundations and big silos and things. And I think they were thinking the cost of removing and clearing the space was so enormous that turned a lot of people away. But for us, that was a huge asset. So that's what we really wanted it for, was the buildings that were there.
Yeah. And so did you find a ready marketplace for your product?
Oh, yeah. I think Salt Lake has been ripe for haunted houses for a long time. Our family has a history of haunting, so I don't know if we'll get into that later, but...
Oh, what is it?
Many years. I don't know if you know the old March of Dimes haunted house.
Oh, yeah.
The old mill,
yep.
Originally way back when. That was my father that was involved with that. He was the chairman of the March of Dimes haunted house, and he even started haunting before that. They kind of recruited him to come and raise money for the March of Dimes, and so that was the beginning of the old mill. And from there, for many years, it was there for many years, and then eventually... was no longer able to do it at the old mill, and the March of Dimes moved to several other locations and eventually closed down when my dad retired.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I remember that old mill. Did it burn down again or something like that, or what happened to that?
I've heard stories of things. I know seismically, I think it's shut down because it's just condemned, basically. Yeah, it's a big rock building that has a lot of old cracks and things, and I think they think if there's an earthquake, that's probably one that's coming down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we looked at it, actually. That was one of the buildings we just loved. I mean, growing up there, I grew up haunting there and building and scaring and doing all that with my dad. And we looked at that property as an option, but it wasn't feasible.
So what is it about fear that is so popular in Utah, especially like this concept of haunted houses? It's interesting. My friend who went to school here, he's like, there's not very many haunted houses in any other places besides Utah. He's like, this is just like a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And what is it about our culture that responds so much to haunted houses?
That's a good question. I think a big part of it is the number of teenagers and kids, and there's just a huge fan base here. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of our primary demographic is probably between 16 to 30-year-old. Well, and actually it used to be more male, but it's more female now. Actually, we have a higher attendance of females than males. So
you got to be at least 16, though.
Well, no, you don't have to be. We don't set age limits on coming in. We kind of leave it up to parental discretion, and if the kid wants to or not. Mm-hmm. We don't. We actually this year have said no one under 3, but this is the first time we've ever actually set a limit. Usually it depends just on the person and their ability to kind of differentiate between reality and fantasy. And some people at age 8, they love it and they want to do it and they're great. And some kids at 16 are still too freaked out and it's too real for them and they don't want to do it. So it's all personalized for sure.
But it's mostly kids who love the rush of getting fear.
Yeah, for sure. Afraid. I mean, our bulk of attendees is teenagers and that age group, but we really stretch to all ages. I mean, like I said, we finally said 3-year-olds because anything under that, they have a hard time keeping up with the walking pace. Yeah. And there's a few stairs in the haunted house. You go up about 5 stories and down stories and underground tunnels and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's and we've had parents that want to carry children through, like infants and stuff, and just for the safety of them and their children walking on stairs and uneven surfaces and stuff, we decided that if they're younger than 3, it's probably a little unsafe. So
yeah, and you haven't like set up a little haunted daycare where the infants can get scared while the parents are getting their
But we do have a lot of people come. And they don't want to go through the haunted house, but we have so many other attractions and features that they can come and spend the night and have a blast and ride zip lines or jump out of the tower. And we have a new fear sphere, which is this kind of like, it's like these little, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a gyroscope type thing that you get strapped into a chair, and then it's like one axis spins you one way and the other goes the other way, and so the whole thing rotates around in every direction and you just spin around and try not to get sick. Wow. Again, something teenagers love. Mm-hmm. You and me maybe not so much.
Yeah. And so I mean I think of the unique culture we live in Utah. Mm-hmm. And there's all these kids, and there's probably most of them are LDS, and they're not allowed to drink or smoke pot or do drugs. And so I think they're looking for a new kind of high.
That's true.
Do you think that might be part of the reason why it is the way it is here?
That could definitely be. I think the adrenaline rush of it is a huge part. And we have kids who make it partway through and ask to leave. But no, yeah, I think the adrenaline is a huge part of it. Everybody loves that.
And I've been researching the brain chemistry, and if anybody watching this podcast knows, I'm really fascinated by brain chemistry and how the brain works. And I know the best description of how fear operates in the body is that your consciousness is in the driver's seat, which is your neocortex mostly, and then some of your cerebral cortex. But when fear is triggered, which is a learned behavior, the only things we're naturally afraid of are falling and the dark. So when fear is triggered in the brain, it's triggered by the amygdala, right? And then it basically tells the prefrontal cortex, you got to get into the driver's seat right now. Time begins to slow down and stretch out.
Right.
Everything starts to happen frame by frame by frame. And then the amygdala is kind of talking to the consciousness part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and say, should I still be driving? Should I still be driving? Should I still be? And if the answer is yes, it's like a few seconds could be stretched out into a few minutes.
Yeah.
And do you design your attractions to stretch out that fear center to make it so that your consciousness takes the back seat and the amygdala is in the driver's seat?
That's a good way of describing this. We do try to make it to where you have highs and lows and where you almost let your guard down and you feel safe again and things are okay, and then again we ramp it right back up and with lighting and sound and all the different things coming at you.
People jumping out,
and everything, and then touch too. We have that's a new feature we have added.
I noticed that.
Is the touch of fear, which some people really love that, and other people just don't want anything to do with it. But yeah, we try to play with those senses where we'll lull you into a safety zone and then shock you.
Nice.
I guess that's a good way to put it.
So do you find that the greatest trigger for fear is sound, is smell, is touch? What is it? What makes people the most afraid?
I think it's the unexpectedness of something, or is usually, and in the haunted house we try to cue on a lot of the fears, from heights to gross out to startle, just and that can be simple as a sound. It's sudden, you're unexpected, and we really try to play on all of those senses. Not sure if you've been through the factory. Have you been through the factory?
I haven't. I was taking my nephews to haunted houses just till a couple of years ago. And the last one we went to was Castle of Chaos.
Excellent.
And it's lots of actors. It's like all sorts of actors, and like you determine the level that you want of engagement with the actors, and they'll like wrestle you if you want them to.
I've done it. I've been there.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
Crazy. And it was like, so you can determine, so you can do something similar at the factory.
Kind of, yeah. We not quite as, they have, I think, like 5 levels now, but we kind of distinguish it into a non-touch experience, or you can opt for the touch experience, where then trained monsters and actors can then mess with you a little more and move you around, sometimes separate you from your group and stuff like that.
Nice.
And that often invokes a little bit of fear and anxiety in people.
Yeah,
for sure.
How would you say what are your big differentiations from like Castle of Chaos and Nightmare on 13th?
Wow. Well, they're all great shows. I think, in my opinion, they're all different and feature different things. I think Castle of Chaos has leaned a lot more on the touch and the extreme touch too, to where they have the levels and things. This is hard to say. Nightmare on 13th, I love their show as well. I think it's, again, in my opinion and what I've seen, fewer actors, more animatronic, and more, what would you say? I guess more motorized and animatronic type things. We have a good mixture. We have animatronics, and we have a lot of actors as well. And then I think the atmosphere of the entire factory lends to the whole experience. We have about 100 actors in the show every night.
Wow.
So it's a pretty 6 buildings, 2 underground tunnels, and those are the parts that the customer experiences. We have other areas where we get ready and set up things, and shops where we build stuff, but that's the route the customers get to take.
Wow, 6 buildings. So that yours is probably the largest, I'd assume.
I would think so. As far as I know, in Utah, I think it's the largest and the longest in length to walk through for sure.
Yeah.
I think
how
it
long
may
does
be
it take
even
to walk through it?
About 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes, depending on how fast you can run.
Nice. So I was reading your website, and I read that besides being a former concrete factory, there were people crushed again and again in the factory. Like, it was very unsafe.
Yeah. On our website, we have a lot of the obituaries and the old Tribune articles and Deseret News articles from back in the early 1900s of horrific deaths of workers.
The description of the guy who got his arm sleeve caught in the gears, and then he just
George.
George, and then just pulled in
right
slowly,
Yeah.
and then his whole body was mangled. And so can visitors get caught in the gears and get their arms mangled? And
we try to keep them away from the gears. No, but that's one of our famous ghosts, George, and he had the machine tore his arm right off right there, and then as the story tells, he just bled out there with his arm ripped off. And we have paranormal teams that come in and do ghost hunts all the time. We've had national like the Ghost Adventures. People have come twice and done episodes and spent weeks there.
Wow.
Communicating, and then we have local teams of ghost hunters. Grim Ghost Tours does paranormal investigations there once a month during the off season. Mm-hmm. That's always a fun night for sure.
Wow. So was there, when you first bought this place and it was like a former den for homeless people, was it just like a total mess? Did you have a ton of cleanup work?
Oh, a ton of cleanup work. All the buildings were just full of trash and debris, and some of the underground tunnels were they're 10 foot high. The openings, you can stand in there when they're cleared out, it's 10 feet high. But when we started work there, some of them, there was only about 2 feet of clearance, and the rest was silt and debris and water and sludge and mud and gross stuff from years and years and garbage. And so through a lot of hauling work and digging and excavating and then draining and pumping out a lot of the groundwater, we got down to where we could empty those tunnels completely out, and now they're part of the haunted house again. Yeah, it was huge.
How long did it take you to do all the work?
Oh, wow. It was the spring of 2010. We spent months just clearing out and cleaning up to where we could start construction.
Just you and a big crew of guys?
Yeah. We had a whole team of guys that came in as we were doing construction and building. We hired a team that came in because it's a cement factory. I mean, there's cement dust and rocks and debris pretty much everywhere, and we kind of had to muck it out. Besides that, there'd been probably 20 or 30 years of pigeons living there and homeless people and who knows whatever else. So,
man,
it was a good lot of cleanup.
So
a lot of 40-yard dumpsters went out of there.
Really? Yeah. It sounds like a huge investment. So, I mean, was it just you and your family, or did you have to attract investors? How did you get the startup capital for it?
We both, actually. We started out it's a family-owned business. Myself and my brother-in-law and my father are the three owners and partners in this. So that was the initial group, and then from there we've slowly built our teams, and we borrowed. Well, we had some difficulty opening the first season, getting permits through the city and getting occupancy and things. So our first season, we were supposed to open at the beginning of October or even September. And because of the delays on permits and things, we didn't get open until about 5 days before Halloween. Oh, wow. So it really shot our whole year of making any money. Mm-hmm. And so that set us back a little bit. And we had to get some investors involved, and that carried us on. We've been growing and getting bigger and better ever since.
So every year you make improvements to all the attractions, change it up completely. So it's never the same experience.
Well, there's certain we originally we thought we'd change at least half of the haunted house every year. And then as things have gone on, we pick and selectively change certain areas. We have 12 what we call zones throughout the haunted house. And this year we've completely redone at least 2 of the inside zones. Plus, we've added a whole bunch of new features outside. We have the new ride, the Sphere of Fear, that one I kind of described, as well as we have a whole new interactive selfie station. We call it the selfie stations. There's actually 6 interactive scenes where you and your friends can go in and sit in a living room where zombies are breaking through the windows and doors, and you get your picture in this zombie apocalypse living room. And then we have a torture chamber scene where you can go and put your head on above the hanging bodies, and it looks like you are the hanging body being tortured. And again, pictures. Everything nowadays is social media. And the kids love to go where they can take pictures and show their friends cool things. So, and we'd have 6 really cool spots for that now, in addition to our regular photo ops and other things. So it's all new.
Very cool. So I was wondering, you're being in the business of fear. What do you think that people should really be afraid of? Obviously, zombies are a huge thing. There's a lot going on in the world right now.
Oh, wow.
We have a lot of people feel like their greatest fear is our president. A lot of people who on the opposite side think their greatest fear is the media and what they're doing to destroy our president. Those are political issues. We have unsettled regions all around the globe. What would you think that is something people should legitimately be afraid of?
Wow. I think those are all really scary real life things. And I think interestingly, when there's all these outside fears and threats that are real, people like going to a haunted house because it's an escape from reality, and they kind of can go and have fear, but in a different way. It's another type of fear. I don't know.
They can take their logical, rational fears and maybe set them aside.
Put them in the back, and step into a fantasy world, kind of.
Do you think that with the rise of fentanyl and opioids and all these people getting, wanting to take drugs, and that being one of the biggest problems we have in modern day society, that maybe a zombie apocalypse is on its way, where it's all these people addicted to drugs?
Yeah, I know. That's a real fear. I'm sure. There's a lot of real fears out there that people need to watch out for. And come to Fear Factory and have the fantasy fear and enjoy it. This is, I don't know. That's kind of scary when you think about the real fear out there in the world.
It's like I like to use this program to, it's fun to have whimsical things and always look for the best places to eat, the best food, all that stuff. But it's kind of nice to also address the more important issues and what it is that we actually should pay attention to that maybe we're not. Because it seems like a lot of what the media does these days is they create a smoke screen and they're saying, look here.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a lot going on in the background that we're really not paying much attention to, that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Is there, I won't belabor it any much longer, but is there anything that you feel like people just aren't paying attention to that maybe they should?
Wow. I think you've touched on a lot of them. Our planet is a big fear that I hope we all are taking better care of in the future. Those are the real fears, I think, in the real world. But oh wow!
I'll tell you, I read a book, and I got a quote from this book. Because I'm reading it again because it was just such an impactful book. It's called The Gulag Archipelago. This is a book that escaped the Soviet Union in 1970 that describes the prison labor camps that existed all over the Soviet Union. There's a map in the beginning, but there was about I think about 400 prison labor camps in the Soviet Union, and this whole history would have never emerged to the surface, how people were arrested and they were taken to these labor camps and worked to death. They were killed. I mean, and it was 100 million Russian people over the
Wow.
course of like 40 years. And I was never taught this in history.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I just heard the title of this book. It's written by a guy named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And I want to read this quote. It's when he was arrested for basically nothing, writing a letter to his friend that had a little bit of controversial content in it, which gave the Soviet Gulag the opportunity to realize this guy could be a dissenter and cause problems. But he describes fear in this way. It's a blinding flash and a blow which shifts the present instantly into the past and the impossible into the omnipotent actuality. And I really like that. So what you think is absolutely impossible, it's shifted to the omnipotent actuality, where he never believed he could be one of the people being arrested and then shipped off to a gulag because he was a perfectly good citizen.
Yeah.
But do you think at any point in any time in the United States we have to fear of
Oh, wow.
communism, of a totalitarian state? I mean, that's a big question.
That is a big question.
But that's probably
I'm into fear for entertainment. Not just, yeah.
I thought I didn't want this to be your typical interview.
Yeah,
This wasn't going to be like Fox 13.
Yeah. Gosh, with things the way they are in the world, it makes you wonder if that's something that could possibly happen again in the future.
I wanted to segue
right?
into that because I just think everybody should read this book.
I was going to say,
Time
I'm
Magazine
have to look that up.
said this was the best nonfiction book of the 20th century. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for writing it. But I mean, I'm a student of history. I love history. I've never heard of this book.
I haven't ever heard of it.
I never heard about the Soviet labor camps in school when I studied it.
No.
I don't know why it's sort of brushed aside.
Yeah.
But this is what the worst form of Marxism turns into.
Right.
And so, I don't know. But do you think that the totalitarian state? It seems like some people think that's a legitimate fear, or do you not really believe that?
Wow. I mean, that's a good question. Some of the things that have happened in the recent past have made you wonder if we could go back to something like that. I try not to dwell too much in that kind of fear.
Yeah, I think that if as long as we have our First and Second Amendments and they don't,
Right.
and nobody decides to rewrite our Constitution, if we have freedom of speech, which enables you and I to get on this program and talk openly
and read
about
books like that.
Yeah, and then we have freedom to have a firearm, not necessarily for any other reason than defense.
Yeah.
Then I don't see something like this happening, but I mean it just kind of brought it to the forefront of my mind when I read about it and realized that this
Very
total
interesting.
atrocity happened. And I mean 20 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Everybody knows about that, but nobody knows about the 100 million Russians killed in the gulags.
I've always wondered if you went to other countries and other parts of the world and read their history books, how different they would be.
Yeah, no kidding.
Than what we've been taught or what
and
we've
I have
read.
a friend from Russia I brought this book up to, and I think it's just like if you're from Russia, this is banned. This is propaganda.
Okay.
You should just not go there. You don't want to talk about the gulags because it's a very dark period of time that people just don't want to talk about.
So did he know? I mean, was it a common...
So this was secret underground literature that disseminated through the population, and when you had it, you were only allowed to keep it for 48 hours, and you had to pass it on to the next person. It says it in the preface.
Really?
And so I think that if you were holding this and the authorities found out about it, you could be immediately taken off.
Wow.
And so I think that the dissemination, the freedom of speech doesn't exist in Russia even today.
Right.
I think we find out what happens when people say the wrong things just by the guy who was like poisoned by that rare, I think it was some sort of chemical that was highly radioactive and made his face go blue.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
and
that.
that's kind of the method of the organization that Vladimir Putin worked for. I think, what was that called? KGB.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I don't know. I don't fear that today, but I think if too many people become brainwashed, too many people don't have the ability to think freely and say what they want or point to the truth in their speech, then
Absolutely.
I think that's probably my greatest fear.
Yeah. I would think that is that would definitely change things.
Yeah. So, the last thing I want to ask you is, like, so do you guys use how do you design and come up with all your ideas for your attractions every year? Do you use behavioral psychologists, or is it just people who are really creative, or how do
I'd say we travel a lot. We every year we go around the country and see other shows and other places and what they're doing, so we can kind of keep a pulse on the industry and kind of see what new things are going on and what's working. You talked about Salt Lake being a huge hotbed for haunted houses, and comparatively in the West we are, but back east there's some big city, Ohio and New York and a bunch of states that have hundreds of haunted houses, where Salt Lake seems like we have a lot because we have maybe 5 or 10 or something that you hear about a lot. Mm-hmm. And some cities don't have any. California actually is the second largest, I think, of all states in the number of haunted houses. So it's starting to spread west, that's for sure. But Salt Lake's a good spot, I think, just because of the demographics with so many kids and teenagers.
But you get to visit all these other haunted houses to get ideas and bring the ideas back.
We do. We travel. At the end of every year, the Haunted Attraction Association holds what's called the Legendary Haunt Tour, and they contract a city with the haunted houses there to stay open after Halloween, and then all the haunted house owners that close their shows when Halloween's over then travel to that city and go and attend those haunted houses.
Wow.
So we've done that in New Orleans and San Antonio, and this year I think it's in Pennsylvania. We've gone around the country, Ohio and other places, to see some of the biggest and best shows, and we still have a bucket list of others to go visit. So
yeah,
that's where we sometimes pick up new ideas. We'll see a twist on something or a new way of doing something. And
where is the biggest and best haunted house in the United States right now?
Right here in Salt Lake City. I have a handful of favorites. I don't know if I could say one. I have several that are on my favorites list. I haven't seen them yet, so just have seen pictures and heard so much about them. And I couldn't name just one. I don't know.
Yeah. But I suppose it's like you've got to have a budget. It's no longer like I think I went through the March of Dimes, and I think a lot of it was it at Wheeler Farm at one point? Or maybe I'm confusing that.
I don't think it was. No, I think that might have been a different one.
Okay.
Wheeler Farm is done.
But I went one, and the scariest thing about it was like these cobwebs that would shock you.
Really?
Yeah, you would get stuck in them, and you'd be getting shocked.
Wow.
And this was like in the 80s. I mean, I was a kid, and that was probably legal back then. Probably not legal today.
I'm going to have to check into that. I've never seen that.
I mean, it was really painful and not fun.
Wow.
But I thought that's.
I've heard of other things where, like, a hand railing or something, you put your hand on it, grab it, and it has a wire or an electrical current running through it where people will get zapped. But
really,
cobwebs is that's good.
Yeah, that was. It probably had a little like live wire in it or something like that.
Something.
But
that's cool.
Yeah, that was.
That was at Wheeler Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, probably like 80.
Do they still do one?
86, something like that. I kind of don't think so.
I'm not sure.
It seems like
a long time.
that the best and biggest haunted houses are now like so pervasive, everybody knows about them, that maybe these smaller ones aren't able to compete, because I would think you would need a pretty big budget to maintain what you guys are doing.
Yeah, that's very true. And there are a lot of what we call home haunters, people that do little haunted things in their yard or at their houses. And Salt Lake and Utah, it's huge. There's a lot of them. There's websites of just home haunters that share their stories and share their.
There's a family in Sugar House on 9th South and like probably 1500 East or 9th East, sorry, and 1500 South. And they always have this amazing paper mache thing, and they built this giant dinosaur that was attacking their house last year. I couldn't believe it. It was like
I didn't see
the
that.
most spectacular thing. Yeah, it's like 9th East and right around 1500 South.
Yeah, and there's some amazing things. I mean, some of these home haunters do some really cool stuff, and obviously in a little smaller scale or in a, whatever they can manage, but there's some really cool stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, cool. So where can people go to get tickets and learn more about Fear Factory?
You can go to our website, fearfactoryslc.com. Also, if you're going to be showing up to buy tickets at the door, you can save money by getting discount tickets at Little Caesars and Dunkin' Donuts all across the Wasatch Front. But our best place is probably the website. If you pre-purchase ahead, you don't have to wait in the ticket line, and you just go straight into the graveyard and get queued up to go in.
How much is a ticket?
Right now, it's $26 for general admission and $26 for general admission and $36, for our VIP. And in October, on weekends, it goes up. It's more expensive on Fridays and Saturdays, so if you want to save money, come during the week.
Okay.
It goes up $5 on each of the tickets.
Nice.
So,
cool.
yeah. And part of that is because we want to get people to come when it's more enjoyable. The weekdays are much more manageable. We get thousands on the Friday and Saturday before Halloween.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And it can be a bit of a wait, and it can be, a whole night activity just waiting to get into the haunted house. So and some people love that. We have a lot of entertainment. We have live bands on stage and entertainment and magicians and all kinds of stuff going on. So if you're looking for a fun night, it's definitely where you want to go. But if you're in a hurry, get the VIP pass and skip the wait in line and go right in.
Yeah. That's what it is.
A lot of people
you
like
don't
that.
have to wait.
Yeah, it gets you in a lot faster. And you get a VIP souvenir at the exit when you come out.
Nice.
So.
And you guys are like, what's your address again?
666 West, 800 South.
Nice.
Salt Lake City.
Near the Granary District, right?
Right, the Granary District, right next to I-15. It's the big old cement factory that you see all painted up all year long.
Nice.
And you'll notice the big monsters out in the yard on the columns that you can see as you're driving on the freeway. When those are up, we're open. Those go up, it's Halloween time, or in the spring, we open for halfway to Halloween or a Friday the 13th event. If the monsters go up, Fear Factory's opening.
Sweet. I'll keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Rob, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All
appreciate
right.
it.
The Utah Story Show is brought to you in part by Legends Pub and Grill. It's locally owned and operated and serving up all your classic favorites and unique originals too. They have amazing burgers, which I absolutely love. Their food is made with real, wholesome, delicious ingredients, awesome appetizers, main dishes like steaks, sandwiches, salads, pizzas, calzones, and now they've got a very special new options for gluten-free and vegetarian folks. Finish off your meal with mouth-watering desserts, plus they have a full bar which offers all sorts of local craft beers. I love their talented bartenders, their tasty creations, and check them out for an upcoming Utah Jazz game or U of U game. It gets rowdy in there, but it's an awesome environment to go check out a game. They recommend you call ahead and reserve space for your group, and they accommodate all ages. They now have 2 locations. Your downtown Salt Lake City location is at 677 South, 200 West, and their new Southtown location is at 10631 South, Holiday Park Drive in Sandy, Utah. The Utah Stories podcast is brought to you in part by Curry Pizza. So Curry Pizza has been serving Indian food for over 10 years, and they came up with a twist of creation of putting curry sauces on pizzas. They opened their first location in a small town called Bicknell Utah. It was called Binda's Curry Pizza Palace. When they began serving some incredible pizzas, such as chicken tiki masala pizza, with all of the fresh spices and ingredients of the old world, with fresh Italian sausage, spicy sausage, and they also offer mango korma pizza. The Utah Story Show is brought to you by Curry Pizza, Paisley's Grass-Fed Beef, Utah State, home of the Aggies, Legend Sports Bar and Grill. We thank them for their support of this program.